Let me ask you something simple, but uncomfortable. If your life stayed exactly the same for the next 365 days, would you be proud of who you became? Because here's the truth most people avoid. Time doesn't wait for motivation. It doesn't wait for confidence. It doesn't wait for someday. It just moves quietly, relentlessly. And every second you waste, it never comes back. Time is the one resource every human being receives in equal measure, yet it is the one resource most people misuse without even realizing it. You can lose money and earn it back. You can lose opportunities and create new ones. You can even lose relationships and, with effort, rebuild them. But time is different. Once a moment passes, it does not pause, it does not rewind, and it does not return. It disappears completely into memory, leaving only consequences behind. That is why time is not just valuable, it is irreplaceable. Every second you ignore this truth, you are quietly spending something you can never earn again, no matter how hard you try. Most people underestimate time because they cannot see it physically. You can hold cash in your hand, you can measure distance, you can store resources, but you cannot physically grasp time. Because of this invisibility, it becomes easy to waste. Hours are lost in distraction, days are lost in delay, and years are lost in comfort. People often believe they have plenty of time, but that belief is the greatest illusion of all. Life does not announce deadlines in advance. It simply moves forward whether you are ready or not. The tragedy is not that time runs out, but that people realize its value too late. When you begin to understand time as non-renewable, your mindset shifts completely. Suddenly, procrastination is no longer harmless. It becomes expensive. Every postponed action carries a hidden cost. Every delayed decision silently reshapes your future in ways you cannot immediately see. The difference between success and regret is often not intelligence or talent, but awareness of time. Those who respect it treat each hour as an investment, while those who ignore it treat it as something abundant and endless. But abundance is an illusion when the supply is permanently fixed. Think about the way time compounds. One wasted hour does not feel significant in isolation. It seems small, almost meaningless. But 1 hour becomes a day becomes a week, and a week becomes a pattern. Over months and years, that pattern becomes identity. The same is true for productive time. One focused hour of learning, one disciplined hour of practice, one intentional hour of growth may not seem powerful at first, but repeated consistently, it builds momentum that cannot be easily reversed. Time does not just pass. It accumulates into results, whether positive or negative. What makes time even more powerful is that it is always moving at the same speed. It does not slow down when you are confused. It does not speed up when you are successful. It does not wait when you are unprepared. It remains constant while everything else in life changes. That means the real question is never about how much time you have, but about how you use the time you are given. Every person alive today has the same 24 hours, yet the outcomes of those hours vary drastically depending on intention, discipline, and awareness. There is also a silent truth about time that many only recognize in hindsight. Wasted time often creates regret that cannot be undone. Regret is not just emotional, it is reflective. It shows you what you could have become if you had treated your time differently. That is why time is not just a resource, it is a mirror of your choices. It reveals your priorities more accurately than words ever can. And as it continues to move forward, it continuously asks one question without speaking: what are you doing with me right now? Motivation is often misunderstood as the starting point of success, but in reality, it is one of the least dependable forces in human behavior. Motivation comes in waves. Some days it feels powerful, almost unstoppable, and on other days it disappears completely without warning. If a person builds their entire life around motivation, they are essentially building on shifting sand. It may hold them up temporarily, but the moment pressure increases or excitement fades, everything begins to collapse. That is why relying on motivation alone creates inconsistency. and inconsistency is the silent enemy of progress. Discipline, on the other hand, is not emotional. It does not depend on mood, inspiration, or external encouragement. Discipline is the ability to do what needs to be done, even when there is no desire to do it. It is the structure that keeps you moving forward when motivation has already left. While motivation asks, "Do I feel like doing this today?" Discipline answers, "This is what must be done regardless." That shift in thinking is what separates temporary effort from long-term achievement. People who succeed consistently are not always the most motivated. They are the most disciplined. One of the biggest mistakes people make is waiting for the right feeling before they take action. They believe they need to feel inspired before they start studying, exercising, building a skill, or working on a goal. But in reality, action creates motivation far more often than motivation creates action. When you begin doing the work, even without excitement, something changes internally. Progress generates momentum, and momentum begins to replace hesitation. Discipline is what starts the engine, even when the fuel of motivation is missing. Discipline also builds identity over time. Every time you choose effort over comfort, you reinforce a version of yourself that is capable, reliable, and focused. Every time you give in to excuses, you reinforce the opposite. This means discipline is not just about tasks. It is about becoming someone. The more consistently you act with discipline, the less you depend on emotional states to define your behavior. Eventually, discipline stops feeling like a struggle and becomes a standard way of living. You no longer ask whether you should do something, you simply do it because it aligns with who you are becoming. Another important truth is that discipline thrives in routine. When actions are repeated consistently, they become automatic. And what becomes automatic no longer requires negotiation with yourself. This is where most people lose their progress. They rely too much on daily decision making instead of building systems. Without structure, every day becomes a battle between effort and excuses. With structure, the battle disappears because the decision has already been made in advance. Discipline removes the need for constant motivation by replacing choice with habit. In the long run, discipline always outperforms motivation because it survives conditions. It works when you are tired, when you are bored, when you are discouraged, and when results are not immediate. Motivation cannot guarantee that. That is why relying on feelings is risky, but relying on discipline is stable. The people who achieve meaningful results are not those who always feel inspired. They are those who continue even when inspiration is absent. Over time, discipline turns ordinary effort into extraordinary outcomes, not because it is exciting, but because it is consistent. Progress is often misunderstood because people expect it to appear in dramatic, visible leaps. They believe change must be loud to be real, instant success, sudden transformation, overnight achievement. But real growth rarely works that way. In reality, the most powerful changes are almost invisible at the beginning. A small improvement of 1% does not feel significant in the moment. It feels too minor to matter. But that is exactly why it is so powerful, because it is sustainable. And anything sustainable, when repeated consistently, becomes unstoppable. The idea of small improvements is rooted in compounding. Compounding is not just a financial principle. It is a life principle. When you improve even slightly each day, the results multiply over time rather than simply add up. At first, the difference is barely noticeable. You might read a few extra pages, practice a skill for a few extra minutes, or correct one small habit. None of it feels revolutionary. But over weeks and months, those small actions begin to stack on top of each other. Eventually, they create a version of you that is unrecognizable compared to where you started. One of the reasons people underestimate small improvements is because they compare effort to immediate results. They expect effort today to produce visible success tomorrow. When that doesn't happen, they assume nothing is working. But growth does not operate on short timelines. It operates in layers. Each layer builds quietly beneath the surface before becoming visible later. Just like a building does not appear instantly when construction begins, personal development also requires invisible groundwork. The foundation is always the most important part, even if it is the least impressive stage. Small improvements also reduce resistance. When goals feel too big, the mind often reacts with hesitation or avoidance. But when the goal is reduced to something manageable, something as small as improving by 1%, the resistance weakens. The brain accepts it more easily because it does not feel threatening or overwhelming. This is why consistency is easier to maintain when the focus is on small steps rather than massive outcomes. The smaller the action, the easier it is to repeat, and repetition is what builds mastery. Over time, these small actions begin to shape identity. A person who studies just a little every day becomes a learner. A person who trains just a little every day becomes an athlete in progress. A person who improves just a little every day becomes someone who is always evolving. Identity is not formed in a single moment. It is formed through repeated evidence. Every small improvement is a piece of evidence that you are not the same person you were yesterday. And when enough evidence accumulates, identity naturally transforms. The most powerful aspect of small improvements is that they are nearly impossible to stop once momentum builds. At the beginning, progress feels slow and fragile, but once consistency takes root, stopping becomes harder than continuing. This is because progress begins to reinforce itself. Each improvement increases confidence, and increased confidence makes the next step easier. Over time, what started as small effort becomes a strong system of growth that no longer depends on motivation or external pressure. It becomes a natural rhythm of advancement where every day contributes to something larger than itself. Comfort feels safe, familiar, and emotionally rewarding, which is exactly why it is so dangerous for long-term growth. When a person chooses comfort repeatedly, they may feel stable in the moment, but they slowly begin to limit their own potential. Comfort creates the illusion of security, but it often hides stagnation. The human mind naturally gravitates toward ease, less effort, less uncertainty. But growth does not live in ease. Growth exists just beyond discomfort, where effort is required and certainty is not guaranteed. The problem with comfort is that it does not announce its consequences immediately. It does not punish you in a single moment. Instead, it slowly reduces your capacity over time. When you avoid challenges today, you do not feel the loss instantly. But weeks, months, and years later, the gap becomes visible. Skills that were never developed remain weak. Opportunities that were never pursued disappear. Potential that was never tested begins to fade. Comfort does not destroy progress suddenly. It quietly delays it until delay becomes loss. Most people do not realize that discomfort is actually a signal of growth. When something feels difficult, unfamiliar, or mentally demanding, it is often a sign that you are expanding beyond your current limits. The mind resists this expansion because it prefers predictable environments. But every meaningful improvement in life requires stepping into uncertainty. Whether it is learning a new skill, starting a difficult task, or facing a fear, discomfort is the entry point of development. Avoiding it may feel easier, but it comes at the cost of evolution. Comfort also weakens resilience. When life is always easy, even small difficulties can feel overwhelming. A person who avoids struggle becomes less prepared for real challenges when they arrive. On the other hand, a person who regularly chooses discomfort builds mental strength. They become familiar with difficulty, and familiarity reduces fear. This is why disciplined struggle is not punishment. It is preparation. It trains the mind to stay steady when circumstances are unpredictable. Without that training, even minor setbacks can feel like major failures. Another hidden danger of comfort is that it distorts ambition. When someone becomes too comfortable, their goals often shrink without them noticing. They stop aiming for improvement and start aiming for convenience. Instead of asking, "How can I grow?" they begin asking, "How can I make this easier?" Over time, ambition is replaced with maintenance. Life becomes about preserving comfort rather than expanding capability. And while comfort may feel satisfying in the short term, it gradually reduces the size of what a person believes is possible. Breaking comfort requires intentional effort. It does not disappear on its own because it is designed to feel appealing. Growth only begins when a person consciously chooses difficulty over ease, effort over avoidance, and progress over temporary relief. Every time you step outside your comfort zone, you stretch your limits slightly further, and with repetition, what once felt uncomfortable becomes normal. That is how expansion happens, not through sudden leaps, but through repeated decisions to choose growth over comfort, even when comfort feels easier in the moment. Most people think their future is decided by one big moment, one opportunity, one decision, one breakthrough. But in reality, the future is not shaped in a single event. It is shaped quietly, day by day, through habits that seem too small to notice. Every action you repeat becomes a signal about who you are becoming. You are not just doing habits, you are being built by them. What feels like a simple routine today is actually the foundation of your tomorrow. Habits are powerful because they remove the need for constant decision making. Instead of asking yourself every day whether you will take action, habits automate behavior. But automation works both ways. If your habits are positive, they quietly move you forward without effort. If your habits are negative, they also move you, just in the opposite direction. The danger is that both types feel normal in the moment. That's why people rarely notice the impact of habits until the results have already accumulated. What makes habits so influential is their ability to compound over time. A single action may seem insignificant, but repetition turns it into identity. Reading 10 pages a day does not feel life-changing in a week, but over a year it becomes knowledge, perspective, and mental growth. Similarly, wasting small amounts of time daily does not feel serious at first, but over time it becomes lost potential that cannot be recovered. Habits do not announce their consequences immediately. They reveal them gradually through outcomes that feel sudden but are actually built over time. Another important truth about habits is that they shape discipline without requiring constant willpower. Willpower is limited. It drains throughout the day and weakens under pressure. Habits, however, operate beyond willpower once they are established. They turn effort into routine and routine into identity. This is why successful people rely less on motivation and more on structured habits. They do not negotiate with themselves every day. They follow systems that already exist. The structure removes hesitation and replaces it with consistency. Habits also define direction, not just action. It is not only what you do, but the direction those actions consistently take you in. Small habits either move you closer to growth or closer to stagnation. There is no neutral position. Even inaction is a habit that produces results over time. That means every repeated behavior is quietly contributing to a long-term trajectory. You may not see the direction immediately, but over months and years, the pattern becomes undeniable. The most important realization is that your future self is already being built by the choices you make today. There is no sudden transformation where everything changes overnight without preparation. Instead, every habit you repeat is shaping the person you will eventually become. Whether intentional or not, your daily actions are designing your future reality. That is why habits are not just routines. They are instructions you are giving to your future life, one repeated action at a time. One of the biggest barriers that stops people from moving forward is the belief that they need to be fully prepared before they begin. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect mindset, or the perfect conditions. But perfection is not a starting point. It is a moving target that never stands still long enough to be reached. While people wait for everything to align perfectly, time continues to move forward without hesitation. The opportunity does not pause just because someone is unsure. It keeps advancing, and every delay quietly becomes a missed chance to grow. Imperfect action is often far more powerful than perfect intention. Many people spend a large amount of time thinking, planning, and preparing, believing that preparation alone will guarantee success. But preparation without execution has no real value. It is only when action begins that ideas are tested, skills are developed, and progress becomes real. Starting imperfectly means accepting that you will not have everything figured out, but choosing to move anyway. That decision alone separates those who grow from those who remain stuck in endless preparation. Fear of failure is one of the main reasons people avoid starting. They assume that mistakes are signs of weakness or proof that they are not ready. But mistakes are not the opposite of success. They are part of it. Every mistake carries information, and every error reveals what needs to be improved. If you wait until you are confident enough to never fail, you will never begin anything meaningful. Growth requires exposure to failure, not avoidance of it. The sooner you start, the sooner you begin learning what actually works. Another important truth is that clarity comes through action, not before it. People often think they need complete clarity before they can take the first step, but clarity is rarely found in thought alone. It is discovered through doing. When you start moving, even imperfectly, you begin to see what was previously unclear. Each step reveals new information, which then improves the next step. This process continues until uncertainty gradually transforms into understanding. Waiting for clarity delays progress, but acting creates it. The idea of waiting for the perfect moment is also deceptive because no moment ever feels fully perfect. There will always be some form of uncertainty, limitation, or discomfort present. Conditions will never align in a way that removes all risk or difficulty. If someone defines perfect time as a time with zero problems, they will never find it. Life is always in motion, and challenges are always present in some form. The only real difference between people who succeed and those who don't is not timing. It is willingness to begin despite imperfection. Starting imperfectly builds momentum, and momentum changes everything. Once action begins, even in a small or unrefined way, it becomes easier to continue. Movement replaces hesitation. Progress replaces doubt. And experience replaces assumption. What begins as an imperfect attempt often becomes the foundation for improvement. Over time, repeated imperfect actions evolve into skill, confidence, and mastery. The beginning does not need to be perfect. It only needs to exist because everything meaningful grows from something that started before it was ready. In the end, it was never about having more time. It was always about respecting the time already given. Because life does not reward those who wait for perfect conditions. It rewards those who move while conditions are still unclear, those who choose discipline over delay, and those who understand that progress is built quietly, not suddenly. You don't need a perfect start. You don't need perfect confidence. You don't need perfect timing. What you need is the courage to begin while things are still imperfect, and the consistency to keep going when results are not immediate. Every second that passes is either building your future or quietly taking it away. There is no neutral ground. The direction is always being decided by what you do next and what you refuse to postpone. So when the noise of hesitation gets loud, and when waiting starts to feel easier than working, remember this: the clock is still running, whether you act or not.